everybody, and welcome to the Penelope Possum channel with me, your hostess, Penelope the Possum. As you might have noticed, I got a new light. It's a lot better than the old one was. You can see my face real well now. I'm not in shadows anymore. And we're gonna be writing some creepypasta tonight. Hi! We're reading creepypasta tonight. So I'm gonna put on some royalty-free music and just go from there. Hold on, we're updating. Just a moment. Any creepypastas in mind? Yes, we're reading this one right here. Because why not?
Sending nudes.
Noodles. Yum. Oh. Just a moment. There we go. Okay. We're ready. If you have any other creepypastas you might want read, let me know so I can look them up. I usually just kind of go for random ones. This is Mommy's Illness. And we don't get to know the author until the end, so let's get reading. Mommy was sick. I don't know what she had. Dad said that she would always stay in her room. Mommy was sick. I don't know what she had. Daddy said that she should always stay in her room. Always. He told me to keep out of the attic. That's where Mommy was. Daddy wouldn't tell me what was wrong with Mommy. Whenever I'd asked, he'd flinch, like he'd been hit. Daddy told me Mommy is not all together anymore, like she used to be. This confused me. What did Daddy mean by not all together anymore? Was she crazy? I didn't know. Daddy never talked about her. Not unless you asked. Excuse me. When I asked about Mommy, Daddy never got mad. He was gentle. He would never yell at me. Even when I asked about her. When someone said Mommy's name, Laura, his face would become very sad. I guess he was just upset about Mommy being sick. He never mentioned her, but he loved Mommy. He really wanted her to get better. So did I. I'd always acted like a little boy, even though I was almost 10. You feel like the mother is cut up? Probably. That is almost definitely what is happening here. The room where Mommy was, the attic, was in the hallway upstairs, right outside my bedroom door. When the door was open, you could see it from anywhere in my room. It was nailed shut, so I couldn't go in there. Sometimes I just sat on my Lightning McQueen bed and stared at it, wondering what Mommy was doing. Sometimes I could hear a little shuffling noise coming from up there. Could she walk? Crawl? Could she even move? Daddy still wouldn't say anything. All he said was, "She's fine, don't worry. Just leave her be." He told me to stop worrying about Mommy, but I couldn't. And tonight, I was gonna find out about Mommy's illness. Considering there's shuffling happening up there, I'm thinking Mommy might be a zombie. I decided to find out on Saturday. At least, I think it was Saturday. During the middle of the day, I snuck a hammer from the drawer in the shed. I also found a stepladder in there. I took them and hid them. I did it while Daddy was making dinner. That way he wouldn't know. I hid the hammer in my toy box next to my bed, under all of my toys.
You have gotten dinner already, Shib.
Then I put the stepladder in my closet next to the door. I would get them both later. A few hours after dinner, at bedtime, while Daddy was tucking me in, I began to plan things out. Around 2 a.m., I snuck into Daddy's bedroom across the hall and made sure he was sleeping. He was. Then I got the hammer out of my toy box and the stepladder from my closet and went into the hallway. It was dark, but I could see the attic well enough. I carefully placed the stepladder under the attic door and picked up the hammer. Quietly climbed up the stepladder. Hold on, it said it was nailed shut earlier, now it's saying it was screwed shut. I'm changing it. This person clearly forgot what they wrote. It was hard taking the nails out, but I got all 4 of them. I hopped off the stepladder, making sure to be quiet, and moved it out of the way. I pulled the long cord on the attic door, opening it. It felt like it hadn't been opened in ages. As I lowered the small square door, a strong, unidentifiable smell assaulted my nose. It smelled familiar, something I smelled when I got hurt. Blood? Maybe. I slowly unfolded the segmented ladder leading into the attic until it reached its full length. I just stood there for a while and peered into the darkness within. All these weeks I'd been left wondering about Mommy. Now I got to know. Gathering up my courage, I climbed a small ladder, stepped into the dusty and dry attic. I looked about, trying to find Mommy, searching, but only with my eyes. I didn't want to move, but I had to. I was on the edge of one side of the attic. I slowly made my way to the other side, one step at a time. This took minutes, one step at a time, I told myself. I was halfway across the attic, almost there. I thought that I made a mistake. I couldn't see where I was stepping. My left foot landed straight on a loose nail jutting from the floorboards. I let out a soft yelp and fell forward on the floor, catching myself on something cold with the side of my left forearm. Probably a table. I cried quietly to myself. Luckily, I fell very softly and didn't wake up Daddy. I sat cross-legged and examined my punctured foot. It hurt. It hurt a lot. But it wasn't really bleeding. The nail must be covered in blood, though. I checked, and sure enough it was. Hey, I thought to myself, I can see things better. My eyes had adjusted to the dark. Then I felt the cold thing. It was slowly moving down my arm. I know it was. I could feel it. I looked at my arm. I saw the cold thing, wet and dripping and black, just like my blood. This was blood. I heard a soft hissing noise behind me and turned. On the blood-covered operating table, lined with surgical tools, was Mommy. Each of her severed and decaying limbs, each of her pulled out rotten teeth, and both her fluid-oozing, severed head and naked skin-torn torso were hissing. They were actually hissing. But they weren't just hissing. They were moving. Every splayed out limb on the table was moving towards the decomposing torso. When a severed limb or bone got close enough. You called it? You called it and I called it. She's putting herself back together, so she's clearly not just dead. Cut up in there. But snapped back into place with a thick crunch or a thick, sickening squelch. I stood in absolute horror as I witnessed my dead mother somehow piece herself back together. The body was putting itself back together like a jigsaw puzzle, figuring out what goes where and how it goes. It was thinking. It knew what it was doing, but worst of all, it was beginning to move and talk. She turned her filthy, blood-encrusted head to look at me, followed by the sound of a snapping tree branch. Her eyes met mine. Her eyes were the only part of her decomposed body that was fully intact, and they were still so full of life. My mother let out in a soft soft groan-like voice my name. Dane. Her flesh ripped from her tight jaw as she moved her mouth. Dane, sweetie. Listen, your mother, get out of the house now. She brought her beautiful dark brown eyes to mine. My eyes were just like hers. At that moment, I knew she wasn't gonna hurt me. She sat up, grabbing a bone saw from the table, and said, "Run along now, sweetie. Dad and I have to talk." And I understood everything. My mother walked up to me and patted me on the back and said, "Remember, I'll always love you. Now go." I heard Dad scream as I left the house. Apparently Dad screamed so loudly that he made the neighbor wake, who then called the police. They arrived at my house about 10 minutes later. When they entered my house, they were greeted by a gruesome sight. My father was in multiple pieces, almost too many to count. Fingers, toes, limbs, and entrails, anything else you could think of, was on a pile of crusty, sticky blood. My mother, however, was the same way I had found her. The exact same way. My father didn't even get to fight back. Now I understand what my father did to my mother and why this all happened. Mother and father were never on equal terms. They would always argue, mostly over nothing. Their marriage was unstable, to say the least. They were always shouting. I guess my young mind blocked it all out. Regardless of what happened, I miss both mother and father. But I live in a good home with good people now. It's a foster home. My caretakers, Bill and Sue, are an older couple. Their views are comparable to most adults, but they're good people. They're even planning my birthday this year in advance. I'm turning 15. That's the end of this little story. I miss my parents dearly, but I have a great life. I'll never forget my mother's official last words to me. Remember, I'll always love you. Now go. I love her too, though. In fact, I love her so much that I took her sickness away from her. It happened when I heard my father scream right before he died. That night. Turns out it's contagious. Her disease has gotten to me and become a part of me. And you know what? I'm glad. I can spread this disease in the honor of my late mother. I can spread the same type of love my father gave to my mommy. The type of love you have to give an arm and a leg to receive. Or of course, some fingers, a hand, and eye. You name it. Thanks for listening. I have thing to do. You see, yesterday at school, I noticed the girl I like had a red handprint the size of a grown man's across her face. Just found out the handprint is her father's. I guess it's finally time to do it. It's time to pass on Mommy's illness. Oh, you have a stories or series for me? Do tell. What's the name? Let me eat some mac and cheese real quick. I guess the author's information isn't on there. But go ahead, lay it on me. Tell me. The ghost tree. Ooh, let's see if I can find it here. Nah. Oops. Okay, so not here, but fret not. We have other avenues. Take your time, I'm enjoying my mac and cheese. Brandon Fate Cloth. I might have to look it up. Okay, hold on. We're gonna... Ow. Do you have any... Where? Did I scroll past it somehow? Oh, excuse me. Is this it? I literally do not know, my friend. The series is called The Ghost Tree, okay. Going up. Got it. This doesn't look like it either. Ah, okay, here we go. We'll click this. Pause immediately. What? What to do? Yes, that is one of those stories, but it's an already done video of it. Here it is. I found it. I found it. I found it. I found it, found it, found it, found it. Gonna, real quick. There. Here is Come Live in the Ashes of My Heart, part 1 of 4. We're probably only gonna be able to read this part because it looks really long. And I don't got all night. I stopped streaming at around 9. Journal entry 1. So I just found a strange note in the basement. It is just one sentence and it says, "Come live in the ashes of my heart." Weird, right? It's a strange bit of excitement, but I don't think it's enough to get me out of this funk. Beans. Oh, stop doing that. I moved into this house 2 days ago, and I already regret it. I'm tired and filthy, but that's not the problem. And the house itself, while very old and sometimes creepy, is also very beautiful in a lot of ways. It's certainly nicer than anywhere I've ever lived before, even if that isn't saying much. And what I just found in the basement is the most interesting thing I've come across in a long time. The problem is that I never should have moved here with Phil. After being with him for 2 years, I knew in the back of my head that there were problems that went beyond knowing the growing pains of a relationship. I think Phil knows that too. And that's why he suggested we move to a new state, as though the stress of moving and isolation of a new town was somehow going to bond us closer together, rather than drifting us apart. But let me be clear, Phil is a good guy. He drinks too much at times and doesn't always have the best judgment, but he's generally responsible, kind, and loyal. I just don't think he's the right person for me. I knew it before I agreed to move. I knew it when we closed on the house, and I certainly know it now, sitting in a room packed with boxes stuffed full of reminders of our lives. But still, I can't put all the blame on him. I was fool enough to go along with it. Both of us playing relationship chicken and revving our engines, careening towards each other faster and faster, daring the other to be the one that says, no, that's enough, this isn't working anymore. And I think I'm just about there. I started keeping this journal based off of a self-help book that I read once that said, when you have difficult decision in your life to make, journaling to keep track of your thoughts and feelings over time can help you see the objective reality of your inner self, better than relying purely on memory and your subjective thoughts and feelings at any given time. So that's what I'm going to do over the next few days. And when I look back at it, if I'm still feeling like I do right now, I'm going to tell Phil it's over. But back to what I just found in the basement. First, you need to understand when I say this house is old, I mean it is old. I don't know a ton about styles of houses, but the realtor said it was Victorian style, and that it may have been built during the Victorian era, as land records for the area first account for the house in 1884. But that's also how far back the local records go for anything. The house was already here, so it's hard to say when it was actually built. In any case, like I said, the house is beautiful. It's made of a light gray brick with dark gray fans, shingles draping the various peaks, and curves of its roof like feathers of some large wintry bird. And the room inside are a strange mix of large open spaces and tight alcoves and hallways. And while the entire house has a certain weight to it, I kind of chalk it up to being so old, and most of the weird feelings I get come from when I'm in the basement anyways. The basement is surprisingly clean, being compromised to 2 large rooms devoid of any furnishings except for a row of empty gun racks that are built into one wall. My initial thought was to replace them with bookshelves at some point, but now I'm starting to wonder if I'll be here long enough for it to matter. Anyways, enough about that. Time to talk about the note I found. I was moving some boxes down here when I noticed something sticking out of one of the walls. It was a folded piece of paper. So yellowed with age, I was afraid it was going to crumble when I opened it. Where was I? Ah, yes. It held, however, and I saw written inside that single line in the beautiful handwriting, "Come live in the ashes of my heart." I checked the place in the brick where I'd pulled it from and saw there was a gap in the mortar. I didn't look closely at the time because of the lighting, but I think I'm going back down there with a flashlight to check it out again. Something is weird about that room anyways. I haven't measured it, but I would swear it's several feet shorter than the other room. While there are reasons that could be the case, I almost feel like the brick wall with the note was built later than the rest to divide the basement. The brick looks slightly different from the rest, or at least I think it does. Who knows? I'll write more when I'm done checking it out. If I'm going to write this stuff down, I'd like to be more than just my complaining about my boyfriend problems. Fuck, I'm so lonely out here. My job doesn't start for 2 more weeks. Anyways, signing off for now. Journal entry 2. There's something behind that wall. I went back down there, shined a flashlight into the gap in mortar, and it goes all the way through. The hole was too small for me to see, shine the light at the same time, so I got a screwdriver, poked out some more of the mortar until I could remove the brick. I couldn't see much, but there is definitely another room over there, and I thought I saw part of a bed frame. About that time is when I heard Phil coming in upstairs. For some reason, I didn't want to know about it just yet. I didn't want to share my discovery. I had the uncharitable thought that I didn't want him to fill all over it, which is a general phrase I sometimes think of when he gets involved in some conversation and activity and just lessens it somehow. Fuck, I sound like a bitch right now. I don't mean it like that. I just mean he can't enjoy something strange like this. He has an almost hostile reaction to things he doesn't understand. You'd almost immediately want to either dismiss it or come up with some rational explanation. I just want to savor the mystery of it, even if just for a little while. Put the brick back and quickly went back upstairs, managing to avoid mentioning the note or the hidden room I just found without directly lying to him. I'm writing this before heading to bed, and I already have plans to go buy a sledgehammer in the morning. Fucking motorcycle. I will kill you, motorcycle. I'm going to see what's in that room. Journal entry 3. So breaking down a brick wall, even an old and slightly crumbly one, is harder than I thought it would be. I kind of assumed since I had so little trouble getting the one brick free, the rest would crumble pretty easily. But not so much. I went to a local hardware store and bought a small sledgehammer. avoiding the cashier's chipper questions about what a little lady like myself was going to use such a big hammer for. And when I got back to the house, I went to work on the wall immediately. The biggest problem wasn't swinging it. It's heavy, but I'm in good shape and made sure I could swing it well before I bought it. The biggest problem is vibrations. Every time it hits the bricks, shockwaves are sent up my arms all the way to my shoulders. I put on some gardening gloves I rooted out of rocks in the garage, and it helped a little, but my hands were still buzzing and numb by the time I was done. Excuse me. Still, after a little over an hour, the wall was about a third gone, which was more than enough to let me in and allow in some more light. I also picked up a small electric lantern at the store, and when I turned it on, it sent a wash of cold white light across the dark contours of that hidden room. What I had seen before was a bed, a rusty iron frame with a thin mattress that was half black with rot. Next to the bed was a wooden nightstand that contained a few candle stubs and holders, and on small plates. And against one wall was a cedar chest that looked like it had some kind of leather-bound notebook sitting on top of it. My heart was in my throat at this point. I had either found an old bedroom that had been walled up without ever being cleaned out, or had been found where someone had been imprisoned at one point. I considered calling the police, but there was no sign of the body. There was such a sense of age and musty disuse that I felt sure any victims, if there were any, would be long gone by now anyways. I was doing another sweep of the room with the lantern and my flashlight, and I saw the shape of a man. I screamed, dropping the lantern, backing towards the opening in the wall when I realized it wasn't an actual man. It was the silhouette of a man painted or burned into the far wall. My breathing still quick and painful, I looked around for several moments to make sure I wasn't mistaken, that there wasn't some stranger in that abandoned room with me, but I saw nothing. Bending down, I got the lantern and gave a quick peek to the empty space underneath the bed and nightstand table before standing and walking to the silhouette. Up close, I could see that it looked less like paint or burning and more like a form of mold or rot. It was still undeniably in the shape of a man, half a foot taller than myself, and half again as broad. I reached out to touch the black area where his chest would be. The wall had a slight sponginess that made me pull back my figure quickly. Wiping my hands on my pants, I went over to the chest and sat. There were books aside. Inside the chest were clothes, mostly the size for a large man. Sometimes towards the bottom did look somewhat smaller. All of them were in surprisingly good condition, particularly given how old-fashioned they look. I felt a strange kind of guilt going through those clothes, as though I was prying into the private world of a stranger. I guess in some ways I was. But time had made the point moot all the same. There was nothing left but this dark room and the handful of belongings left behind. And of course, that book. Oh, we're almost done. I picked up the book and stepped out into the main part of the basement where the light was better. The book seemed to be pristine, with signs of age, but none of mold or decay. There was a leather cord tying it shut. And as I gently unwound the cord and opened the book, a masculine smell. A good smell that made the experience of holding that book and seeing the words written on the first page more personal, more powerful than I can really describe. The handwriting was the same as the note I had found stuck in that wall. It said, "The Last Testament of Justin Perry, completed June 12th, 1909. May this find its way into kinder hands than I have known. I am about to start reading it, and I'll try to just transcribe it as soon as possible. It feels so important. I'm going to have to explain the room to Phil when he sees the wall, but for now at least, the book is going to say secret. Until next time, journal, keep my secrets for me. I think we can start the next one. Journal entry 4. As promised, here's a transcription of what I found in the book belonging to Justin Perry. It's pretty long, so I finished the transcription in my next post. As I write this, I am a 21-year-old man of what I believe to be sound mind and spiritual foundation, despite what I've been told after these last 8 years. I am not insane, and I am not possessed by the devil or any of his lesser imps. To the contrary, even though I hold much love in my heart, with no small portion of it still being afforded to my tormentors, my parents and my brother. Though many other acts would aptly be described as evil, they are not bad people. They're misguided and fearful, yes, but I do believe they still have goodness in them. I am given food and water, candles to it, and occasionally a book to read, or some scrap of paper to write upon. I have developed a persistent cough in the last year, and I feel the lack of sunlight and pervasive dampness of the sealed away space are slowly doing damage, and that time and medicine may not be able to reverse. I know I get sores at times from my frequent inability to bathe, and the twin stenches of myself and the waste bucket in the corner are imperceptibly now. I try to separate my hate for my situation from those who cause it. And most of the time I think I succeed. My hope is that writing this will help further. I turned 21 2 weeks ago, and as a gift, my brother John gave me this notebook and a new set of Waterman safety pens. I didn't know such a thing even existed. And it truly is a wonderful thing to have such a convenient writing tool. I cried at the kindness. And outside my room, John looked in and smiled his sad smile as I crouched in the dark, clutching this book and softly weeping as our mother began to close the door for the day. I don't have much dignity left at this point. Dignity is like a plant. As much as plants need sunlight and oxygen, dignity needs an audience and hope. When you are completely isolated, when you have moved past any idea of really escaping the black hole you are in, you find yourself quickly shedding things like dignity. My primary reasons for living have been base animal drive to survive in my internal world. I had always had a powerful imagination, and in this purgatory I've spent many hours far away in some distant land of my own creation. I love to write as well. Since my imprisonment has been rare that I've had enough paper to write of any length. That and the act of kindness behind it is what made this book and the pen such a wonderful gift for me. Yet when I got them, I found I had trouble finding things to write about. After 3 days of trying, realization struck me. My imagination has begun to wither and die too. This thought terrified me in a way that losing my liberty or dignity had not. It was the final bulwark I had against my abject despair, the last remaining island in a rising sea of insanity and death If I had lost the ability to escape into my mind, I would truly be lost. It was 6 days ago I first contemplated taking my life. For some that may seem absurd, as I know of many who considered it would have considered it or committed the act long before now. I'd like to say I abstained because of my deep moral reserves or my titanic willpower. But neither would be the truth. In all honesty, the only reason I haven't taken my life before now is the ghost tree. Now I need to explain myself, and do so in a clear fashion. I need to further elucidate on how I came to be confined here, a prisoner in the basement of my own home. It all began when I was 11, the younger of 2 children raised by strict but kind parents. I was still prone to frequent wanderings of thought and flights of fancy. I was largely an obedient child. I had enough admiration for my brother and fearful respect for my parents. That when I was rebuked for daydreaming or telling fantastic tales, I truly did try to curb those tendencies, or at least confine them to my own thoughts and late-night conversations with John. I suppose that is why the ghost tree caught me by surprise. When I woke up the day after Christmas, I ran outside to play. I found a giant new tree near the edge of our yard. It stood out to me not just because of the oddity of a new tree suddenly appearing, but also because it varied so much from any of the other trees I had ever seen. Where most of our trees were pine or oak with the occasional sweet gum or poplar for variety's sake, this tree was something else entirely. It had a massive trunk that twisted and warped upon itself before breaking out into at least 12 distinct branches of such girth and height they all stood as substantial trees of their own. Coming off of these trees were swirls of wood, the color of dark red wine, and sweeping greens that looked more like a storm of clouds than the clumps of leaves that they were supposed to. I should be clear that from the start I had a sense of strangeness, but I also had profound feelings of joy and excitement at its discovery and presence, as though some looming giant had settled in our yard, intent on a deep slumber while he guarded our home. This thought was firmly in my mind as I ran to the tree and touched it. Its bark felt strange, but was solid enough. Under the canopy of its many arms, I could smell a warm, spicy smell, unlike any I'd ever encountered. It made my head swim slightly, but not in an unpleasant way. The thought suddenly occurred to me that I might be the first one to discover it, and I couldn't wait to show John and my parents my proud accomplishment. 10 minutes later, my parents were walking back into the house, my father shaking his head disgustedly. John was still outside with me, face stricken with worry. He was 2 years older than me, but he never seemed like an older brother except at times like this. It was the look he would get when I was afraid I was going to get in trouble, or when he couldn't understand something I was talking about, which at times he politely assumed that what I was saying was somehow wrong. I hated the look, but I understood it now. None of them could see the tree. In the 2 years that follow, I would occasionally bring up the tree to them, and each time I was met with greater anger and rejection. I was told I was to give up these childish games and fantasies. My behavior was continuing to deteriorate. and I needed to start showing signs of growing up and becoming a man. Finally, my father, not the most emotional of men at best of times, struck me across the face one afternoon. He had tears in his eyes when he did it, his voice carrying a note of raw desperation as he gripped my arms and gave me a light shake. He asked me why I persisted with this tree story. What had they done wrong for me to become as I was? Didn't I care how I upset my mother? Didn't I care that people said people in town said about my strange ways? What do I think is going to happen? No idea. I have no idea what's going to happen. I think the tree is real, but only he can see it for some reason. What was I to say? His words would have hurt more when I was 11, but I was growing a thicker skin due to regular sharp words and scornful looks. Still, it did strike a nerve, him accusing me of not caring, being so thoughtless. All the while they blindlessly punished me for being able to see something they could not. So, out of frustration and anger, of a need to end the debate, and the accusations once and for all, I did the one thing I always held off from doing in anyone else's presence. I climbed the tree. I think we're going to only be able to get a few more paragraphs out. I heard my father yelling angrily at me to stop whatever it was I was doing. But even from his vantage point at the porch, I was only 2 feet up. He could tell at a distance I was no longer touching the ground. His voice died in his chest, but it was too late. I was now 4 feet up. The earlier commotion had brought out Mama and John. I was focused on climbing the familiar bark of my special tree. The strangeness of scaling it during daylight hours or for an audience was not lost on me, but of secondary importance. When I heard my mother scream, I almost lost my grip. I shifted my feet and leaned against the nearest branch for a moment, catching my breath and my bearings. Turning to glance back at the house, I saw all 3 of them glancing at me with abject horror. I considered going back down, but no, it was time for this to be done. I continued to climb until I was over 30 feet up, perched like a raccoon on one of the tallest branches that could support my weight. It was strange, but despite my general dislike of heights, I'd never felt scared climbing that tree. It made me feel invigorated, as though I was taking part in some secret ritual of nature that was replenishing me, body and soul. At the top, I took a moment to take in the sprawling land around us. In the fading afternoon light, it was so beautiful. With more than a little reluctance, I turned my eyes back to my family, who sat huddled and broken on the front porch steps. My brother and father still watching me while my mother wept softly in her hands. I had always imagined their reaction being something like this. To them, I suppose it looked like I had convulsed and leapt my way up a tower of nothingness. And now I sat perched mid-air. I tried to give them a comforting smile, but I couldn't quite manage it, and they likely couldn't have seen it anyways. Instead, I planned to go down and explain to them I was not making up the tree. Just because they couldn't see it didn't mean it was imaginary, something to fear. Things went rather differently. As I made my last careful movements back down to the earth, I felt a rope around my neck. I grabbed at it, losing my balance as I was tugged off my feet. It was John and my father. They meant to bind me. And that'll be all we have time for tonight, guys. Thank you all for coming to hang out with the possum. And bless you. Thank you all for coming to hang out with the possum tonight. It was fun. I hope you all have a good night. Please remember to stay out of traffic, stay out of small spaces you can get trapped in. Stay out of engine compartments. Stay hydrated. Stay awesome, possums. I love you all. Have a wonderful night. And I'll see you all again Thursday, where we're gonna read more of this, maybe? Till then, possums.